G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. The Dottar-Nomad's Chautaqua continues, herewith the third video in the series. As I recall it, the last video finished with her staying with a Glenninnis expatriate at Port Hedland. Although she sent me a pretty good photo on the 2nd of June, which I somehow managed to omit from the previous video, so I better show you that now. They call it Nature's Window. Very nice. So I sat in it. This is Liz we're talking about. So she even took a really good photo of it. Which, oh, come on. Yeah, I had to try and show you. So she cruised along what they call 80-mile beach. And on the 12th, when she was at about Broome, she had a bit of trouble with the rubber U-shaped section sealing ring on the fuel filler of one of her jerry cans. So Daddy Warbles had to send instructional photographs, several versions thereof. But she did get it figured out. So once again, the SMS network saved the day. So then she went from Broome to Derby and then out to Windjana Gorge, which involved driving on the Gibb River Road. And that was all very well and good, but then, after she'd been to Windjana Gorge, she toddled on and got back onto Highway number 1, and sometime around Halls Creek, I think, when she was checking the oil, that's when she discovered that the oil filler plug in a RAV4 was somewhere part of the Gibb River Road, 200 to 400 kilometres behind her on the dirt. And Daddy Warbles was fairly kind of sort of horrified, because without the cap, you can have road dust getting into your engine. I mean, she's not driving a Subaru. Her oil filler cap was on the top of the tappet cover, and if this had happened in a Subaru, you'd be able to, I don't know, wrap a handkerchief over there or a bit of plastic bag and a rubber band. It'd be easy. But after driving for 70 more kilometres and thinking about it, my daughter, the one who doesn't know how to change a tyre, despite having grown up raised by a hillbilly in the forest, there she was, literally camped at the end of the Tennant track, the worst road in Australia, planning on driving down it the next day, and she realised that you actually got to have an oil filler cap. And I'm very proud to say this, because my father was an engine reconditioner who used to sometimes make the tools and then cast the pistons to use the tools he'd made to repair engines. My daughter made a new oil filler cap. She rolled up some alfoil and wadded it tight, and she sculpted one. It had to go into a recess, flush fitting on the tappet cover. She made an oil filler cap, and she drove down the Tennant track to Wolfe's Creek Meteor Crater, and she had a marvellous time. And when she got back to Halls Creek on a weekday, when their Repco was open, she bought a new one for $15.70 or something. But yeah, 200 to 400 kilometres on a dirt road. And I was terrified of the amount of dirt that might have got into the engine, but she said the oil was clear and cool, and it turns out that the prices they want to charge blonde women to change the engine oil and replace the oil filter are so exorbitant that she's still driving on the same oil. We figure there must be sufficient blow-by getting past the piston rings to slightly pressurise the crankcase, so the gas flow through her oil filler hole is always out of the tappet cover. So even if she was behind another vehicle on a dirt road and there was road dust under the engine compartment, it never went down into the engine because the slipstream was coming out of that hole. So she got away with it. Isn't that brilliant? My daughter made a new bit for her engine, a critical bit, and it worked on the Tennant track. There it is there, that bit sticking down into the middle of Australia. Now, I didn't know she was going to be driving on the Tennant track, which actually finishes up at Alice Springs. So when she told me that she was turning off Highway number 1 to go down to Wolfe Creek Meteor Crater on the Tanami track, Warble Daddy nearly shit himself because he thought that she was going to drive to Alice Springs going that way. Literally the worst road in Australia. But happily not. She turned around and she went back along Highway number 1, making her way to Katherine and Darwin, staying with another Glen Innes expatriate for a few days, forgetting to change the engine oil, going to Litchfield National Park and Mary River National Park, before discovering that at Katherine they wanted $320 to change the engine oil and the oil filter. So we decided that that wasn't actually necessary. And then down to Alice Springs and Uluru and the Olgas. So the little darling is in fact getting around. There were no photos for quite a while, and then she sent me a great big bunch of photos in one burst, so to speak. After Wolfe Creek, she did have a plan to visit a place called the Bungles, but the road was too bad, and after 2 kilometres she turned back, which I thought was a pretty good decision. And then she found that even when she wanted to leave a car at a caravan park and hitchhike with somebody else who was going to the Bungles, nobody else was going to the Bungles because the road was too bad. So she drove on to the next waypoint and paid for a shower at a service station. On the 20th of June, that is all Zebedee Springs. And this is Emma Gorge, which looks to have not much water in it. At least not fallen down, though some is. She took a detour to the famous Ord River White Elephant, the Argyle Dam, making her way from Kununurra to Katherine and up to Darwin, pretty much touching all the national parks as she goes. Finally taking pity on the old man, sending some photos of Liz and Ellie at Wolfe Creek, where they make horror movies, famously. And they have a really big, wide, flat hole in the ground where a visitor from space arrived at great pace, smacked into the desert, thus forming a tourist attraction, and we know how vital they are. The other thing this service is capable of is allowing one to send screenshots of a Facebook argument, which a cousin of mine decided to have 3 pages of screenshots. Not really sure why he decided he wanted to have a Facebook fight with my daughter while she's in the middle of a round Australia holiday. Possibly because he's used to thinking of himself as being some kind of a hero, because after his 10 years long service at the bank that he was working at, he took his missus around Australia and they had a holiday, and therefore he's the expert. And when she didn't leap to take his advice, yeah, all kinds of silly things come out. So anyway, she had a great time ignoring cousin's advice. You know, you get that in the best regulated families. And while she was at Darwin, she sent me a photo of a hamburger, vegetarian, in some really groovy hipster restaurant where they serve hamburgers on black bread rolls. Never seen such a thing. But then again, I'm just a dumb little hillbilly hayseed provincial hick, as such things are measured. So, after Darwin there was Litchfield National Park and Mary River National Park. And because she forgot to change the oil in Darwin, she rang ahead to the Katherine Repco, and or somewhere in Katherine, and they wanted to charge her $320 to change the oil in the oil filter. So we decided that because The oil was clean and clear, and the engine wasn't using oil, and it wasn't using fuel, and it didn't sound like it was a bag of rusty nails in a tin can tied to a horse's tail being kicked at every footstep as it gallops down the road. None of those bad signs. Therefore, she didn't pay $320 for an oil change at Katherine. Instead, she just went straight on down to Alice Springs and Uluru. And then she took pity on me again, sent me some more photos of ground she'd already covered. Katherine Gorge, Rainbow Valley. Look at that road. I think they've put a grader over it, and then they've sprayed hot tar on the sand. Edith Falls. If she fell a long way down, did Edith. Mataranka Springs. With curbstone paving around the waterhole. A handrail and steps for the tourists in the swimming pool. Windjana Gorge, or Windjana Gorge. Carryoda Book Exchange. Elizabeth had her favourite activity, reading, on the Round Australia holiday. Gibbo the Glenninnis expatriate in Darwin. Pulling faces for selfies. Northern Territory border. So yeah, some of these are not quite in sequence, but I reckon she's done pretty well to send me any stuff at all. Entering Alice Springs. Looks like they're slabs of stone put up on their end and painted to make their happy tourist sign. And I'm guessing that's the Northern Territory flag, perhaps, or maybe just a resort flag. Bitter Springs. I wonder what sends it bitter. It looks pretty nice. Happily, all this cruising around the waterholes of the Northern Territory, I haven't heard she's had to use the $119 Fisker finish axe to chop up a crocodile yet. Tropic of Capricorn marker, which looks as if somebody had an opportunity to construct an armillary sphere and they missed it. Devil's Marbles by the light of the dawn. Lake Argyle from the Ord River Dam. Greatest agricultural white elephant Australia has ever constructed. Everybody, whomsoever, has tried to farm there has gone broke. First rays of dawn on the rock. Uluru. Not sure, but I think that thing in the midground might be her tent. There's certainly other people around there. And this came in yesterday. Ellie with Uluru. With Liz. Looking very dressed up for a camping holiday, but there you go. Makeup. Hair done. Uluru. And Ellie. Which brings us to the end of the photo scroll. So it does. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. The Chautaqua continues. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.